Hi, my name is Courtney DeAnda, she, her pronouns, and today I'm going to lead our session in equity focused around how to be an ally. And before I start today, I just want to be clear that you will by no means leave this session knowing how to be an expert in this area. It's a learning process that you have to commit to, and you're going to have to do the work outside of this session to be able to do that. So with that in mind, here we go. We'll start by just naming the norm in our society, that we live in a society that is strongly cis-normative and heteronormative. Cis-normative means that people are going to commonly assume that your gender identity matches your biological sex that was assigned at birth, rather than how you identify. And heteronormative, meaning that people will assume you're straight unless you tell them otherwise. And so this norm can never truly be inclusive because the marginalized folks will always be considered the other. And so it's important to name this norm as we start our conversation around changing what's normal in our society. And that's going to involve these tough, awkward, uncomfortable conversations that are going to challenge us, especially if we have the privilege of living within the norm. We must also acknowledge and be aware of our privilege when we're diving into this conversation. We need to take action to make sure that our community is truly inclusive and equitable for everyone, and that's going to involve changing what's normal. So the reason why I'm passionate about this, the reason why I'm leading this session is because it's something that's really important to me. I experienced a lot of trauma around gender growing up, and in my adult life I found freedom in feminism, and feminism isn't feminism unless it's intersectional, and so this has really tied into my connection with the LGBTQ community as well. So that trauma I experienced, I revisited it after sharing about my pregnancy, and started having these really uncomfortable conversations with people about why my partner and I chose to raise our baby using gender-affirming parenting. If you look at the meme down on the bottom, that's basically how we are choosing to raise our child. And so I started compiling all my research in one place, which you're more than welcome to look at, and started having those tough conversations. And here we are. So for me, it really just comes down to I want my child and any child, my students, to feel loved and safe, no matter what they're like, no matter what they wear, no matter what they play with, no matter their genitals, no matter what. And why are you here? It's because as educators, we need to make sure we're recognizing all students and their humanity, and gender is a major part of that. We want our students to feel seen and loved and accepted for who they are. I cannot emphasize enough that this work is urgent. LGBTQ kids are more likely to die by suicide, which is preventable. Being a safe and trusted adult is life-changing for so many kids. We can try to expect or force kids to act within social norms, the binary and stereotypical behaviors, but that doesn't change who they are inside. And I personally want my child and all kids to feel accepted for who they are, whether that matches the norm or not. So here we go. Let's get equipped to make sure we're doing everything we can to make our school an inclusive community where everyone feels loved and respected. So we'll start with some clips from this video by Alok. They are an amazing poet. If you have time, you should look at more of their stuff. And if you have time, I'd highly encourage you to watch this whole video, but we're going to watch a segment today.
Representation is actually so much about mental health. It's about showing queer and trans young people the lives that you're living are legitimate lives. There have been people who have struggled before you, and there will probably be people struggling after you, but what you're going through is not something that you have to go through in isolation. I think that one of the saddest parts about being trans is you begin to experience violence first from the people who say that they love you. I have a line in one of my poems where I say, they will try their best to destroy you and call it love. That from a young age, I had my parents saying, I love you, but why are you so feminine? I love you, but... And that love was always contingent on me being straight, and me being cis, and I will spend the rest of my life grieving that. And so when I meet young queer and trans youth, I often look at them and I just want to say, I understand what you're going through. And I don't require you to be strong or proud or resilient. I require you to be honest. For a long time, I underestimated the power of representation because I was saying, I have dreams beyond just being on the screen, you know? Like, I want to be an artist. And then I started to think about it, and I was like, whoa, if I had had access to people who look like me growing up, my life would have been so much easier. The suicide rates for trans and non-binary youth, especially trans and non-binary youth of color, are astronomical. And the reason they're so high is because when you tell us we don't exist, at some point we begin to believe you. And what media representation does is it's actually a visual argument to the world. We're here, we're queer, we're trans, we're people of color, we're gender conforming. Our lives matter. We're going and navigating through things that are simultaneously extremely similar to you and extremely different for you, and you cannot erase us. I don't get dressed to look like anything other than looking like myself. So at the end of the day, I just say I'm a look and I'm figuring it out. So are you. Hey guys!
All right, so as you heard in that video, some suicide stats. This is, again, urgent work. You can go through and read some of these stats, but suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people ages 10 to 24. And LGB, lesbian, gay, bi, youth seriously contemplate suicide almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual. And you don't see the T in that one because with trans youth, that number goes up significantly higher. And then when you see the intersectionality here, trans youth of color, that number is even higher. So again, I cannot emphasize enough the urgency of this work. It's so important that we recognize the system and structures in our society that marginalize so many people. So take a moment and read those stats, and if you want to dig more into them, there's a link to the Trevor Project where you can look into them more. So as educators, we have a duty, what we must do. Suicide is preventable, and as educators, we are in a position to be a trusted adult for so many students. So it's our duty to do what I'm going to give you, 3 things. First, be informed. You must educate yourself. Second, learn how to be an ally. That's what we're going to focus on today, particularly by listening to the voices of the marginalized. And 3, take urgent action to keep our kids safe. As you can see from this stat, only 26% of LGBTQ youth report that they always feel safe in the classroom, and that is unacceptable. So step 1, again, 3 steps. Be informed, learn to be an ally, and take action. So being informed, this is going to take work. These questions, hopefully you know the answer to them, and if you don't, this is where your work needs to start. What does LGBTQIA mean? What's the difference between gender and sex? What's cis? What's trans? What's intersex, and why does it matter? What are pronouns, and why do they matter? What's my role as an educator? Where can I find resources? If you want to be, first you need to want to be informed, and then you need to take the steps to do it. So there's lots of different resources linked in here for you so that you can answer those questions in particular, and they're relisted again here. So depending on where you are in your journey, I have some article excerpts for today that you can read, and then there's additional resources on the next slide. I'm not going to go through and teach you these terms in particular because people are going to be in different places in their journey of what they know and what they need to learn, but all of us can always learn more. You have to take the time, though, to do the work to learn and unlearn and to internalize this information and know that you will never be an expert on it. I am by no means an expert here. This is there's no destination. It's a journey to keep learning. I have linked in here some more specific information that's pertinent to educators from the Human Rights Campaign, which I'd highly recommend you look through as well. And then there's another guide that's specific to stats in New Mexico. That's also a really great resource, especially if you're a visual learner. Um, so again, educate yourself. Next, learn to be an ally. A major way you can do that is by listening. So we have two guest speakers, and then the last step is to take action. So we're going to listen first to a student at Cole. His name is Ty. His pronouns are he, him, his. And Ty and I connected in class when he found out I was using they, them pronouns for my baby. And he just loved it and sent me these comics, which I think are so great, which you can take a look at if you'd like. And he's going to share what he wishes his teachers knew.
Hello, my name is Ty Kennedy and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm currently a junior at DSST Cole High School, and I would like to discuss the importance of normalization of pronouns. In my experience, not many teachers will ask what your pronouns are because they'll normally assume that people who are dressed more femininely are a female and people who are dressed more masculinely are a male. And that's not often always the case because many people don't even understand themselves what they are until somebody starts asking what's your pronouns, because in my experience it wasn't until last year whenever I came here from a different school and I got the syllabus from Courtney DeAnda that asked what my pronouns and gender identity was that I started to realize that I really didn't really feel comfortable with she and her as my pronouns at all. And that's really started making me question myself in a good way. It made me more happy to be able to understand myself. And I feel like not many people will realize how how impactful that could be to a student's life, or just to a person's life in general. Just to be able to feel oh yeah, that's an option, to where I don't have to just fit into this certain criteria of being just who I was assigned at birth, And I feel like that's really important because I don't think I'd be where I am today without, or as happy as I am today without that.
Makes me smile so much. I love the vulnerability there that Ty shared with us. The next part that we're going to listen to, again, if you have time, please watch the whole thing. We're going to watch 3 segments. Again, this work is so urgent, and the second section that I'm talking about is about how to be an ally, but truly we need to be more than just allies, because right now, how students in the LGBTQ community are feeling at school is unacceptable. So we must be more than allies. We're going to start. Again, if you have time, please watch the whole thing.
I wish this type of harassment was only a thing of the past, but I've witnessed my Black, Indigenous, and students of color be seriously harmed by racism. My LGBTQ+ students are verbally and physically assaulted. My non-Christian students are harassed and isolated. And my students with disabilities or mental illnesses are often called names and are consistently underestimated. Ally comes from the Latin word to bind to. Allies are supportive and they're on your side. They help you to not feel alone, and they tend to be curious, open, and kind. They make people feel seen and respected. Allies are wonderful and we need them. But it is not enough for educators to just be allies. We need them to be advocates too. Advocate comes from the Latin word add a voice. These are the folks who are fighting for people's rights and taking action, the ones who are speaking up in public spaces in support of causes and equity, the people who are challenging xenophobia in school policies and in staff meetings, the educators who are writing articles and emails, creating support groups, and working alongside our unions. Support is not enough. We also need to be willing to leave our comfort zones and stand up for all of the human beings who are being marginalized and oppressed. I want to acknowledge that there might be some allies in the audience right now who are feeling a little uncomfortable. I see you, and I honor your feelings. I know it can be terrifying to put yourself out there and that you probably didn't sign up for this when you got your teaching license. But I'm asking you to do it anyway. Minnesota's Commissioner of Education, Mary Catherine Ricker, recently reminded me that we can't expect students to conform to our comfort. Many of our students are scared and in pain, and since they don't have the same fully developed brains, resources, or support systems that we have, then it is up to us to step into our own discomfort so that we can help them. Most educators learn pretty quickly that you can follow Bloom's taxonomy of learning and create all of the dynamic lessons in the world, but they will never truly work unless we first respect Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Many of us have already heard that if we don't Maslow before we bloom and create environments where students feel safe, then there is zero hope of getting kids into their learning brain. All humans deserve to be called by their chosen pronouns and names, and they should be able to use whatever bathroom makes them feel safe. Too many of our transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming students are not eating or drinking during the day so that they don't have to use the bathroom at school. Not only does this cause horrible medical issues, but it also causes emotional pain. A 2018 national survey by the Human Rights Campaign revealed that 73% of LGBTQ youth have experienced verbal threats because of their actual or perceived LGBTQ identity. It's not enough to tell kids that it gets better. We need to show them that we are making it better now. As educators, we must protect them in our classrooms and in our schools. After I learned how to create an inclusive space, the next step was to speak out and stand up. I needed to learn how to challenge my own biases and make sure that my thoughts and behaviors were in sync. I had to increase my understanding of all the ways I showed up with privilege and how that impacted the people around me. I replaced my defensiveness, perspective gaps, and judgment with curiosity. I learned how to understand the difference between intention and impact. I let go of needing to always be the expert. I celebrated vulnerability, and I encouraged authenticity in myself and those around me. I surround myself with people who are willing to courageously hold up a mirror for me so that I can more easily see my mistakes. I know what it feels like to have someone who is supposed to care about you cause you harm. Research and experience teaches us that kids who have been victims of trauma will build resiliency only when they are believed and supported by an adult. I can tell you firsthand that trauma-sensitive environments make learning much easier for everyone. And the only way to build these environments is through active advocacy, every single day and for every single heart.
So again, the urgency here is massive. Especially as educators, we are in this position to be that trusted adult. So we must take action. We must educate ourselves. We must be an ally and an advocate and take action. So again, keeping in mind that there are massive ramifications for how you treat LGBTQ plus youth, whether it's intentional or not, especially kids of color. We must learn to be an ally and beyond an ally, be an advocate and take action to keep our kids safe. It's so important that we affirm and validate our students when they share their identity with us. It may be impactful for just one student, and that's enough. It's important that you handle this vulnerability with care and continue to educate yourself, and do not bombard students with questions, because beyond what they decide to share is none of your business, and it's not their job to educate you. You need to educate yourself, and there are so many different resources, some of which I've linked in this presentation. So for us, our action steps, we need to start with realizing that language matters, kind of like what Alok was talking about. Visibility matters. So we need to shift our thinking and our language and refrain from defaulting to those man descriptors. And then secondly, we can use gender neutral terms to address whole groups. So for example, instead of saying fireman, you can say firefighter. Learn to change your own thinking and then put that into practice. Like instead of saying ladies and gentlemen or boys and girls when you address your classroom, you can say these ones, friends, folks, team, people, peeps, y'all, everyone. And there's some fun and silly ways to do it as well if you'd like to get creative. I know a lot of us are working on not saying guys, but saying y'all or saying everyone. Again, here's some more ways that you can do that. Again, the why here is shifting to gender inclusive language respects and acknowledges the gender identities of all people and removes that assumption. So it's important that we continue to practice this, but inevitably we will make mistakes. And when you do mess up, if you accidentally misgender someone, correct yourself, fix it, and move on. Don't make it a bigger deal by over-explaining or over-apologizing. It's not about you. Don't make it about you by making someone try to assuage your guilt for messing up. Fix it and do better next time. So, action steps for today and beyond. Again, you have to be informed. You need to know the proper terminology at the bare minimum. Second step you could do is consider adding this to your email signature. You can see my example right there of adding in your pronouns. You need to know your students' pronouns and how to respond if you mess up. I have linked in here an About Me activity that I do with my students that Ty referred to. Use gender-neutral terms when you address large groups. It's even expected in the United Nations. And again, keep learning. Know that this is not a destination, but a journey. And I have lots of resources that are a good place to start for you. Another challenge is that you could try when you introduce yourself, start to, how I did it at the beginning. My name is Courtney DeAnda, she, her pronouns, and continue speaking. Don't make a big deal out of it. Help normalize it. This is actually a practice that's already common in a lot of higher education communities, and so that could help our students get prepared in that way as well. It all comes down to this. This work is urgent. We want our kids to feel seen, safe, loved, and accepted, and we are in a special place as teachers, and we have a responsibility to make sure that our students, especially our LGBTQ youth, can be out proud and able to thrive. I love this. We can literally be the person that helps a student feel safe enough to want to continue to be in that space. This is urgent, and this is life or death in not exaggerated terms at all, as you could see from the stats. Again, continue learning. If you have time, please, this is a great place to start reading the Human Rights Campaign Youth Project. All right. Happy learning.